Welcome, everyone, to another Jags podcast, episode 5. We've made it 5 episodes, and we hope you all have enjoyed it. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the draft. We're going to be talking about the newest Jaguar, Cody Kessler, and I'm sure some other things as well. As always, we have with us Joey. Joey, how you doing, man?
Man, I am doing fantastic. I've got my printed out notes prepared. I've got notes on my notes. So, dude, I'm ready.
All right, you're ready to roll. Jason, how you doing, man?
You know, episode 5, we've already made it longer than The Walking Dead did with their original writers.
Really?
Yeah, they only made it 4 episodes.
I mean,
pretty much how I judge myself.
The sky's the limit. Yeah, the sky's the limit. And Robert is back with us this week. Robert, welcome back.
Thank you. Very relaxed. Ready to go.
Yeah, I'm sure you're relaxed. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to let you know you can find us on Twitter at Another Jags Pod. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. If there's any questions you would like us to answer or any topics that you would like us to discuss, you can reach out to us on those social media platforms, and we will do our best to incorporate them in the show. But without any further ado, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk, obviously, the draft. That is the next big thing of the NFL season. It's what we're all waiting for. It's what everyone's talking about, so we are going to as well. What we want to do tonight is we're going to look at one national mock draft and one local mock draft, and just kind of weigh our opinions with what they say. And what we're really doing is trying to predict the unpredictable, because the draft is unpredictable. I mean, the people that study this year-round come up with their final mock draft, what they actually think is going to happen, usually ends up being nothing like what actually happened. So what we're doing tonight, we're just going to discuss what is being said nationally, what is being spoken on locally. So for our national mock draft, we have gone with CBSSports.com. We're going to look at those, and we're going to discuss the top 10, and then we're going to drop all the way down to number 29, where the Jags pick.
Feels good.
It does. It feels great. Because that's where you pick when you go to the conference championship game and win but get robbed and don't actually technically win it. So anyway, without any further ado, let's get to it. Cleveland Browns, number 1 pick. CBS Sports has them taking Sam Darnold, quarterback, USC. Boys, weigh in.
I think it's interesting because I think Josh Allen could very easily go number 1. And if Sam Darnold does go number 1, I think the second pick isn't going to be like that highly sought after. But if the Browns go with Josh Allen, I think people are going to try to scramble to trade up for number 2 to get Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
So it's one of those like domino effect things I could see totally happening.
I think the interesting part, I mean, they're going to get a good quarterback either way, but I've heard some rumors and some kind of like teasings out there that just because they have so many picks, what if they go quarterback 1 and 4? That's kind of what's interesting to me. You know, they could just take 2 of them, use one for trade bait later, whatever. That's what I want to see. That'd be awesome.
That would be incredible. And I've heard the same thing as well. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it would be a crazy thing for them to do, because they always say you can never have enough good quarterbacks, and they are rebuilding. But I don't think that'll happen. I would love to see it happen just for no other reason than the drama of it.
I think if they're going to use the pick as trade bait, they're going to trade it before they make the pick. And I think someone will want Darnold, Allen, or Rosen, or Baker Mayfield. Well, one of them will be there at 4.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants him, they could give all of their picks for that Cleveland pick. So I think you're right. Cleveland is in a good spot. I would be shocked if they drafted 2 quarterbacks. I don't even think that's ever been done before. But
certainly not in the top 5 of the draft.
But I could totally see them trading that 4 pick. It's just, I mean, if they got a quarterback, and I think Saquon Barkley's a really good player. So if they could get a quarterback,
do you think he's the best player in the draft?
I think he's the best player in the draft, but I don't think he's the most valuable player in the draft.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the running back is your most valuable player on your team anymore. I think a D-end, a quarterback, even a defensive back is more valuable to your team nowadays than a running back.
Okay, well, let me stop you right there, and we're going to already go off script here. You say that, and I agree. I think running back is – Jags last year had the 4th pick, which is where you are kind of saying that Cleveland has the 1st and 4th pick. So if they were to pick Saquon Barkley, it'd be the exact same spot that the Jags got Leonard Fournette last year. So let me ask you all this. Was that the right pick for the Jags last year?
Absolutely. For our team, you can't knock that. I mean, how can you be sad or upset about the fact that we picked him? He did fantastic for us. He changed the atmosphere. He changed our whole outlook. I think it brought that into the table. And also, you look at Dallas the year before. They did the same thing with Elliott. I mean, I think Dallas really set the tone for that. They brought back the running back.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here because you also have Alvin Kamara, running back drafted in the 3rd round, that won Rookie of the Year. Dalvin Cook was drafted in the 2nd round, was playing great until he tore his ACL. We passed on Deshaun Watson. Could have had him at 4th overall. So, I mean, I'm not mad at all that the Jags got Fournette. I love Fournette. But was it the best pick the Jags could have made last year at number 4?
I think our situation was unique to where we were set at quarterback, defensive end, and left. Well, if we knew we were going to get a left tackle, if we evaluated our left tackle, then we knew we were going to get him. But, it is an interesting question. Would the Jaguars still have been in the AFC Championship game if Chris Ivory and Yeldon were their 2 running backs?
What was the Jags' record without Leonard Fournette last year? I think they were undefeated without him.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other things that were different. The coach was different. The GM, Coughlin. Coughlin wasn't here.
You probably would have seen a lot more fumbles from Ivory, too, if he had
That's
the
true.
whole year.
Right.
James, I think even the games that Fournette set out, that was less of an impact at that point because the tone had already been set.
Right.
I mean, I think bringing him in showed everybody in the league, showed the team, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. This is our game. This is our identity. We haven't had an identity since Burnell and that team.
But was Fournette our identity or was our smash mouth defense our identity?
Well, they go hand in hand. I mean, if you're a smash mouth defense and you're a hard-nosed running team, I mean, that's like, dude, we're going to beat you up on both sides.
I think he was good last year, but not good enough to really be our identity last year.
I think on offense he was our identity. I mean, and I think that is why he was the right pick at 4. I asked you all the question, but I like the pick because all the other running backs that were taken in the draft last year weren't a Leonard Fournette style runner where he lowers his shoulder, invites the contact, and I think that did
likes the
contact. I think that is what the Jags were trying to do offensively. The culture they were trying to create is we are going to punch you in the mouth and wear you out over 4 quarters. So I'm asking you just to see what y'all thought because the thought this is in drafting running backs is don't take them that high. But we have seen 2 years in a row 2 very impactful running backs taken in the 4th spot in Ezekiel Elliott for Dallas and then last year Leonard Fournette for the Jags. Now we have Cleveland sitting right there again in the 4th spot. If they take Sam Darnold, which I think they will, I think that's exactly who they're going to take. Man, Barkley's sitting pretty. Now think about this. You have Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon, and now you have Tyrod Taylor who can protect the football and run the ball, and now you have Saquon Barkley in a division that I think is very winnable. I think Pittsburgh is on their way down. I think Baltimore's just chilling at the bottom, and Cincinnati, it doesn't scare anybody. I think Cleveland, if they draft right, they could be a 7-9 win team next year.
Well, if they don't draft 2 quarterbacks, they, in my opinion, probably the top 5 players in the draft right now, none of them are quarterbacks, so they can probably get hopefully for them, a decent quarterback, and then get probably a number 1, if not a number 2 player in the draft later on the 4th. So, I mean, they could be in a really good position if they don't draft 2 quarterbacks.
Now, while I'd love to see them take quarterback at 1 and 4, or I'd love to see somebody trade up to get that spot, why I don't think it's going to happen is there's a huge drop-off between the top 3 quarterbacks and Baker Mayfield, in my opinion.
You think so? I thought you were a Baker Mayfield guy.
I love Baker Mayfield. He's a walk-on, transfer.
Chip on his shoulder,
hold on yards, but you don't take him in the top 10, I don't think.
Oh, I bet you he's taken in the top 10. Yeah. I think the Jets want him. I think the Jets are going to try and get. I think they're going to get Baker Mayfield.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, they've made like 0 moves and.
Well, they traded up with Indy, to get the number 3 spot.
I think they have the quarterbacks evaluated, and I think he's the 4th quarterback. So I think whoever's there, I think he's the 4th quarterback taken. I think so. I mean, Darnold, Allen, and Rosen, I think, are lock 1, 2, 3. Just because of Baker Mayfield's size. I mean, you don't see a lot of 6-foot successful quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah,
he's like Drew Brees, but he's like 1 in a million.
To me, his biggest problem is not his size; it's the conference that he played in college that doesn't play any defense whatsoever. I mean, obviously, scouts they can see beyond that, but I can't. But I don't know. I think Baker Mayfield is going to have a much better career than one of those top 3, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, or Josh Rosen. Which one, I'm not sure. I mean, the thing that scares me about Allen is he is all potential. He's size, arm strength.
He reminds me of Bortles.
Is he, though?
He reminds me of Bortles
Except
a lot.
He's not nearly as cool.
He didn't win. He didn't win a game against a single good team, though. Not a single game did he win.
No.
I mean, and not only that, he did terrible on those. in those games.
Bortles only had one good game in college against Oklahoma, so you could say the same thing about Bortles. He was at UCF, and he was a tight end.
Even though we all like Bortles, though, would you go back and still make that same pick now, though?
Heck yeah, bro. I'm a Bortles fan. I'm on the Bortles train.
Yes, we all say yes, Blake. Come on our podcast. Yeah. We all say yes.
This will work eventually.
Yeah. All right,
We mention it every show. It'll happen.
Yeah, it will happen.
We have
let's move on
mushroom.
to the Giants at number 2. This is a very interesting pick for me because CBS Sports has them picking Bradley Chubb, great defensive player, probably maybe the best in the draft. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe at his position. But where are the Giants in terms of a team? Are they trying to be competitive or are they rebuilding? Because they're in a division that has the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles. They have the Redskins, who got Alex Smith, which I don't know if that's a lateral move or not, away from Kirk Cousins. And then you have Dallas, who had an off year last year, but a lot of that was due to the fact that Ezekiel Elliott, with that 6-game suspension, was floating over them the whole time. That is a very competitive division. Are the Giants looking at the future and moving past Eli, or are they trying to say, we have Eli, let's try and compete with him a little bit longer?
I don't think very many teams look at football the way rebuilding the way that basketball and baseball do. I think football, you try to win as many games as you can, no matter what. In my opinion, I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right.
I think the Giants do have a huge glaring need on the defensive line with JPP gone, Jason Pierre-Paul. But I would not be surprised if they traded out of that pick.
No, I wouldn't.
I could see a team trading a lot of picks to try to move up to get a quarterback. I mean, if you think the Jets are going to draft one of the quarterbacks you want at 3, and you swap first and give a couple seconds to move up to draft the quarterback you want, I mean, that's not really looked at as a bad move to a lot of people. You get your franchise quarterback, most fan bases are okay with you giving up a lot of picks for that.
Right.
So I can see the Giants using it. If they are in rebuild mode, the best way to rebuild is to stockpile draft picks and try to get a bunch of young guys on your team that can play.
There was also, not too long ago, a lot of talk about them wanting Sam Darnold. So if he fell, do you think they switch up and just go Sam Darnold instead?
You mean if the Browns don't take
if
Darnold?
they don't take him.
Yeah.
If they end up switching and going a Josh Allen route or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think Darnold lasts past the second pick of the draft. I mean, I think if to Jason's point, if the Giants trade out of that, I see Buffalo big time, because the Jets have traded up number 3. I think Buffalo would love to get one spot ahead of the Jets, a team in their own division, and take the quarterback that they think is better than whoever the next guy is, and let that guy go to the Jets. So, but for the sake of our discussion tonight, let's assume that the Giants keep their pick at number 2. Joey, who do you think they're going to go after?
Well, my comment was going to be that they're not going to do that. So
they're not going to do what?
They're not going to keep that pick.
Oh, you think they're going to trade out of it too?
I think they're trading out of that pick. Part of the reason why is, I don't know if you guys heard the sound clip of the coach talking about Beckham. He said, Beckham is on our team for now. You don't say that if you're committed to winning this season. Mm-hmm. You say that if, he's on the team now, but he is open to trade. You don't trade that player if you're trying to do the best you can this year. So I think they're trading out of that pick.
Okay. All right. So you think they're trading. I think, to me, it all depends on Eli. You know, how many more years are they going to give him? He is the face of the franchise. He should have had a really long consecutive starting streak that they blew last year because they benched him for idiotic reasons. But I don't know. They might not get the offer that they want. And if they stay there, I think they go quarterback. I think you're going to see the top 3 picks in the draft be quarterbacks, which is better news for the Jags, by the way. I think the more quarterbacks are taken before the Jags pick, unless Caldwell and Coughlin want a quarterback, which we'll get to that in a second. I think it's good news for quarterbacks.
I think either way, whether they stay there or not, the top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
If somebody's taking that pick, it is for a quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. All right, so now we move to Cleveland. We kind of brushed over the Jets. We're saying quarterback there. So let's say, let me ask you this. Let's say in no particular order, our top 3 quarterbacks, does everyone agree? Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen? Yep. Sure. I mean, because you said Baker Mayfield is not in that group, right?
I think those 3 are pretty interchangeable as far as taking a flyer. 2 out of the 3 will probably be excellent.
Yeah.
One of them will probably flame out like usual. I definitely think Baker is probably a step below the 3.
Okay, but those 3
Those 3 for sure.
Those 3 for sure. Okay.
I still think Saquon Barkley or Chubbs is going to be in the top 3.
Really?
Yeah.
The top 3?
Yeah.
All right.
When was the last year? 3 quarterbacks were drafted in the first round. And these guys aren't top-notch guys either, though.
No, but the 3 teams listed now, even if the Giants keep that pick, all 3 are desperate for a quarterback. I think the Giants are just as much as any other team because Eli only has so many years left, and you only get this second pick in the draft. every so often, and if you do again, then you're really in trouble.
Yeah, and that's been the cool part of this free agency is those 3 teams really didn't make a serious free agency move for a quarterback.
Right.
So, I mean, it's obvious that those
the Browns picked up Tyrod Taylor as a free agent, and the Jets picked up Teddy Bridgewater. Now, while those are both probably backups, they're probably day one preseason starters. So whoever they draft is going to have to win the job from those guys because every fan base goes into the preseason saying it's open competition, and they don't want to start a rookie right away. They don't want to throw him to the Wolves. They don't ruin his career. All that jargon gets thrown around when you draft a rookie quarterback. So, I mean, and Eli Manning's on the Giants. So it's not like these guys the cupboard's not empty, but realistically, we know those 3 guys outside of Teddy Bridgewater because we don't know anything about him. Who knows?
I think when you look at those 3 teams, however you define rebuilding in the NFL, all 3 of those teams are starting at the bottom and working their way up. And I think Tyrod Taylor's there to be the starter. Obviously in every athlete's mind, that's what they think. But at least for a year, and let Darnold or whoever they get, maybe it's Allen. That's the guy that everyone says needs some work. Maybe that is who goes first off the board. But I think Taylor's there to be the starter for at least a year. But I don't know. I know it's never been done before or has been a really long time. But I see quarterback going in the first 3 picks.
I mean, I honestly just have a problem with somebody named Sam Darnold being an elite quarterback. I mean, you got to have a Johnny Utah or something like that. I mean, Sam Darnold, really?
Yeah, but hey, man, he played at USC.
I was quarterback at USC. USC quarterback ends up being good or playing in the league.
Playing in the league.
Playing in the league.
Carson Palmer is probably the best USC quarterback. But I mean, if Mark Sanchez can go and make a living of it, Matt Leiner's probably the biggest bust, which is funny.
You like Max Whittick?
No. No, I don't. All right, let's go. Let's keep moving to Cleveland, number 4. This is a huge pick. CBS has Saquon Barkley, which seems to be kind of the predictable one. I don't know. I think that would be a wise pick, but I could see them doing all sorts of things here because there is a lot of running backs in this draft. So the big question becomes, do you draft a running back that high?
I mean, that's what's so hard this year is if you look at Barkley's film, and the dude's he's just a specimen. I mean, he's crazy. But you got Chubb and Michelle in the draft as well. Those guys were beasts at Georgia.
And Darius Juice.
I mean, there's so many good running backs you could get later on. I mean, I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah. This is a very deep draft for running backs. Some people say he's the best player in the draft, period. So
he is a freak, man.
He is a freak.
If you watch him at Penn State, that dude, I mean, people couldn't even tackle him.
He bench pressed more at the combine than some offensive linemen, which is in and of itself just insane. So I think that could be the first non-quarterback taken. If the Browns get Sam Darnold and Saquon Barkley, that's a pretty nice start.
I think there's no way the Browns mess up this draft. They're going to be the rebound team of the year.
I agree.
I don't see how it's possible they won't be. I mean, they're going to be good next year.
I really believe that too, because they now have a GM who is a lot better than who they've had. They're getting rid of the whole analytics system, which does not work in the NFL, at least not at the level that it does in other sports, especially baseball. But yeah, I think they're going to make a huge jump. I really do. I mean, I think I could see them competing for their division. I'm not sure if it'll be to the extent like the Jags had their turnaround, but remember, they didn't win it. They've won 1 game the last 2 seasons combined. So I could see them really turning around pretty quick.
I was watching some Cody Kessler film, and I didn't realize how many. Obviously, no one realized besides your Browns fans.
Let me jump in there real quick. Were you watching Cody Kessler film prior to today or after today?
From 3 p.m. until 5 p.m.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. The Browns are like the most penalized team ever. They had so many big plays that were called back on penalties. And I know every team has that, but my eyebrows were raised at how many times they had huge plays. Like if they took out penalties, Cody Kessler's stats would be like amazing, jumping off the sheets. I mean, he had deep 80-yard bombs to like David Njoku, and then it was like, holding. And I was like, oh gosh, like that would really help to my topic about Cody Kessler. So I mean, if they can figure out the penalty thing, I think the Browns, they should have beaten the Titans twice last year. Or they should have beaten the Titans in 2017 and 2016, but penalties kept them from winning the games both times.
Well, don't forget, too, they had the number 1 pick in the draft last year and took Myles Garrett. So Myles Garrett, the defensive end. So they have that sought-after defensive end position, and he is no joke. He is the real deal.
He's good.
Yeah. And so
Jabril Peppers is good, too.
Yeah, he is good.
He comes downhill and stroke you. Mm-hmm. And Njoku's a decent receiver, tight end receiver. So
I mean, and they almost beat us last year as well.
They did. It was a closer game than people
like to
remember.
Admit that.
No, I know.
It was close.
They should have beaten the Titans. They got robbed in that Titans
game.
Is
that the last game of the year?
Second to last game of the year.
Okay. the last game of the year when the guy dropped the wide open touchdown pass. That's just the Cleveland Browns in a nutshell. But they also don't forget they now have a new offensive coordinator from Pittsburgh.
Todd Haley. He's from Jacksonville.
Is he really?
Yeah, he went to UNF.
How about that? But yeah, so I mean, things are. If I was a Browns fan, I would be optimistic, and I think there would be nothing wrong with that. Okay, so let's move on. Denver Broncos. Here we see Josh Rosen's name for the first time, quarterback, UCLA. Personally, he's actually, of the three that we mentioned, the top three quarterbacks, he's my favorite of the three in terms of potential. I just think he's a true pocket passer. I think he can read defense. I think he's smart, has a high football IQ. I think if he went to Denver, he would find success there. So I think that would be a great pick by Denver. I'm not sure if he's going to last that long, but if he does, then Denver would be happy to take him. That's my take on that.
I think Quentin Nelson jumps into the top 5.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think.
Who's Quentin Nelson?
Quentin Nelson is the guard from Notre Dame.
Duh.
And
I'm saying that for our listeners, Jimmy.
I'm well aware.
Of course I know who Quentin Nelson is.
The thing about Quentin Nelson is no one's talking about him. And that's the player that gets drafted way earlier than people want. And GMs do this on purpose. GMs don't talk about people because they don't want to tip their hand. But this dude's a beast, man.
Yeah.
Like, really early in the combine, people are like, whoa, this guy's like is off the charts with like his measurables and all that stuff and his film. And then now it's like he's gone quiet. And that's when a guy sneaks into your top 5. I could see Quentin Nelson getting drafted in the top 4.
Top 4, a guard.
A guard.
Not
4.
a tackle.
I'm sold on him, man.
A
I know
guard.
we talked about this in a podcast earlier, but this guy's good.
Yeah.
This guy is a guard that can totally solidify your entire offensive line.
If there were any holding penalties called against Miami in that game, his stats have been way worse. But the guy is a beast. I'm just saying.
He is.
Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up our top 5 of the draft. As you can see, there are all sorts of scenarios that can happen just within the first 5 picks of the draft. It's going to be a really fun night. I cannot wait for April 26th to get here as we see how these picks truly unfold. So that's really it for that. And we do have some players we want to highlight a little bit as we continue on with the draft talk.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Derwin James from Florida State, and I think he obviously jumped up a lot of people's draft boards with his performance at the NFL Combine. The dude is a freak. He's one of the best secondary players I've seen in a while. Where do you guys see any teams reaching for him?
Yeah, I do, because like you said, he is a freak. I mean, Jalen Ramsey wants the Jags to trade up and get him, which I don't think is happening, but it would be amazing if they did, because he is, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, free safety from Alabama, is a great player as well. If I had to choose between the two, I would take Derwin James. If you don't know much about Derwin James, he played at FSU. Safety, can play almost every position. I'm not exaggerating. Almost every position on the defensive side of the ball. He's taller than Jalen. He's
6'3", 232.
Yeah, big
Plays
boy.
DB.
And he's fast. And he hits. I mean, when he was a freshman at FSU, they were saying when they were having spring practice that when he would hit people, it was the loudest hit in the entire practice. And that was when FSU was cranking, not like this past season.
The dude had 4.5 sacks as a freshman, as a DB.
Yeah.
Like 4.5 sacks. Like, that is crazy. I love DBs that can get after the quarterback. But, I mean, I think he may be better than Jalen Ramsey. And I really, really like Jalen Ramsey. Derwin James.
We love you, Jalen.
We love you, Jalen.
You're number 1.
And we know you love Derwin. So
Yeah.
if we get you both on the same team, that would be awesome. I'd be shocked. I mean, how do you have 3? Unless you move him to safety. You can move him to safety.
Yeah, easily. And in safety is, nothing against Gibson and Church, but that would be I would think, huge improvement
absolutely.
for our safety.
I think he may end up, he was born on my birthday, August 3rd. Wow, look
How
at
about
that. We have a lot more in common, Derwin, than I thought.
You're just letting someone steal your identity now.
That's okay. I'd rather be him than someone else.
Actually, Chris Trapasso for the CBS one, he actually has him listed as going for a safety.
Oh, yeah.
To Tampa. So
That's what everyone said about Jalen Ramsey, though, too.
that's true.
And I was like, come on. This dude's locked down. He may because he's big, but I can see him being a lockdown corner the same way. Everybody said Jalen Ramsey's going to be a safety. I'm just like, have you seen the dude cover one-on-one?
Yeah.
There's no way he's playing safety. He's
Yeah.
going to lock
I
down.
don't know.
the best
I
receiver.
actually think James will be a safety. And a lot of the comparisons that he gets a lot is Cam Chancellor, who is the heart and soul of the defense for.
He covers better than Cam Chancellor, though.
Yeah.
Cam Chancellor's like kind of a ball hawk. Like, Derwin can cover. He's been injured, but he can cover.
He can cover, but he can also, like you said, he can blitz, and he's just so versatile. What I'm hoping is that he doesn't land on another team in the AFC South. If that happens, I will cry.
That's true.
Are you guys not? I know we've kind of touched on this in the past, but are you not worried at all about the fact that he mailed it in last year?
No.
No, not at all. When you talked about that in an earlier podcast, the dude's worried about making money.
So it's all about about the fact that they had coaching issues. He knew they weren't going to win, and he wasn't going to risk.
He was
anything.
injured too. He was injured.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Quotes.
was. And I mean,
I try to watch as few Florida State games as possible. So
I
get
enjoyed
that.
watching them the last couple of years. They've had some good players. Telvin, Jalen, Derwin, not to mention their defensive line who's been good. Jameis Winston, Derwin, what's his name, the running back?
Dalvin
Cook.
Yeah.
Kelvin Benjamin, Nick O'Leary. I'm not even a Florida State
don't know,
fan,
yeah.
but they've had a squad.
Timmy
man.
Jernigan?
They've had a
Yeah.
squad.
Yeah.
So.
No, it doesn't bother me. I think there was more to last year than probably people know in terms of Jimbo Fisher's just presence there. And so I have no problem with him wanting to make sure that he is drafted as high as humanly possible because that's going to set up the rest of his life.
I mean,
I don't think his teammates mind that either.
I actually tend to agree with that because it does seem like Jimbo was checked out like 6 months out as opposed to a couple. So I mean, that obviously has an impact on everything.
I mean, if your head coach is checked out, what are you supposed to do? Especially when you're a top 10 pick, which I think I'll be shocked if he lasts outside of the top 10. And I will be surprised, and it's nothing against Minka Fitzpatrick, safety out of Alabama, but I think Derwin James goes higher than him. He's just
I think he's a better player.
Yeah, I do too. He's just unbelievable. Unless the Jags just shock the world, they're not going to be sniffing him because he's going to go well before they draft at number 29.
Not only that, I think they're going to be mainly focusing on offense for a little while anyways in this draft, maybe until they look for a linebacker or something. But
well, let's talk about that. Unless there's any other specific players y'all want to discuss, let's go ahead and go on down to the Jags at number 29. Yes, you heard me correctly. Number 29 of the first round. If you are used to seeing the Jags in the draft, they draft early and you go to bed afterwards, have a cup of coffee because it's going to be a long night for you because they don't pick till the end of the draft, which is a great place for them to be.
Very nice.
Very nice place because the Jags have now set themselves up with being able to really take the best player that they believe, is at that point in the draft, the best player at any position. So the question is, who do you think they're going to take? I think simply put.
I think that cliche is always out there. Everybody says we're just going to draft the best player available, but that's not the case ever. I think with free agency and what they already had, they have pretty much addressed all the glaring issues for the most part, other than tight end. At that point, is there going to be a tight end available that I want them to take then? I don't think so. I would rather them take tight end second round. I think offensive guard is what they're going to go.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it's stacked. I mean, you got what? Will Hernandez, Isaiah Wynn, Nelson? I mean,
Nelson's gone.
Is he?
Yeah.
I think Nelson, Hernandez, and Wynn are all gone, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm saying if it drops to that, I would love for them to take one of those three. I'd be perfectly happy with that, which is crazy to say in the first round. Guard, great, but that would be awesome.
Let me just because this is the big debate, and
Sure.
I think we need to address it too. If Lamar Jackson is still on the board when the Jags pick at number 29, do they take him?
1,000%, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say no. I would have said yes before we signed Cody Kessler, traded for Cody Kessler, I'm sorry. But now that we have a legitimate backup for Blake, I don't think we even touch quarterback at all.
In the entire draft?
At all, yeah.
Wow.
That's why it's so awesome this year. We have the flexibility to do that.
I mean, you could sign an undrafted quarterback to come in camp, be a camp arm, but you're not going to go into the season with 3 quarterbacks, I don't think.
They didn't last year.
Yeah. I mean,
You
it's sure they're
seriously
not
think
going to do that.
Cody
I was
Kessler-
I was on board with tight end or quarterback, but they kind of, like you said, addressed that in free agency. And I think they are in a position to take best available player. And that's kind of like a cliche thing, but I mean, if the best available player is a defensive end, I think they take the defensive end. If the best available player is a wide receiver, I think they take a wide receiver. I think they literally have their board now because they've addressed almost everything in free agency. Their biggest glaring needs were tight end, offensive line, and quarterback. And they've addressed almost all of those. The wide receiver has almost moved up to our biggest need now, which is crazy to think about considering our roster, but we have addressed almost everything. So I think now we literally are taking best available player.
Well, James mentioned earlier, I mean, the problem I have with that is it's very tough at that point because Lamar Jackson has the potential to be Michael Vick 2.0. We talked about earlier, would we have taken Fournette in that draft where we did, or would we have taken Deshaun Watson? If you jump back to last year, everybody was saying the exact same thing about Deshaun Watson. He was undersized. He wasn't a good throwing quarterback. He was a good running quarterback. I mean, all the same stuff, man. And look at the guy. He's going to pan out, it looks like. So I don't see how you don't take him and throw him into some packages, some play action, some whatever. I would have to take him, personally.
I just don't think run-first quarterbacks have any purpose in the league anymore.
I don't think he is a run-first quarterback. I think that's kind of a
I don't think so either. I think he's just super fast, so everybody assumes that.
He played behind a terrible offensive line at Louisville. And so he ran, yes, because one, he can, and two, because he had to. But I don't think he's necessarily a run-first quarterback. And I think run-first quarterbacks know that you don't succeed in the NFL. But I'll say this. We did address a lot of needs in the offseason, but one thing, if there's one place on the team that does worry me, it is the right side of the offensive line. A.J. Cann, I mean, Jason, I think we've talked about this before. You're not an A.J. Cann fan. I'm not either. I think if there is a legitimate guard at 29, I'm screaming at the TV for them to take that guard, because that right side, once you get past Linder at center, you have Cann, and then there's Parnell as the right tackle, and there's not a lot of depth. We haven't even mentioned this, but Amame left. He's not on the team anymore. He was our starting guard all of last season and played pretty well. I mean, for what we were paying him and what they expected of him, I think he exceeded expectations. So there's not a lot of depth on our offensive line, and as we all know, linemen get hurt. I mean, that's almost a foregone conclusion that one of the starting linemen is going to get hurt eventually, and I would like to see us be able to have someone just build our depth a little bit. If we're going to be a run-first team, if we're believing in Blake and we have these unproven wide receivers, then all of those things are going to succeed because of the offensive line. So let's build that, get some depth, and take the guard. And I'm praying Hernandez is there because I think he's a top guard that at 29 you could easily take. And tight end if you were on Twitter on Sunday, you noticed we did a
tight end Sunday.
And if it showed anything at all, it's that this draft is very deep in tight end. And so I would like to see if they're going to do that, address that in a later round, and not address that in the first round, or trade out and trade in the second round and maybe get one then. But I'm screaming guard all the way.
I mean, I agree. I think that's ideally that would be perfect. And if one of those three are there, absolutely, I'd be super happy. But I don't, like Jason said, I don't think they're going to be there. I mean, there's lots of teams that need offensive guards at this point, and I think they're going to be gone. So are you going to reach and take somebody the fourth or fifth or sixth best offensive guard on the list? And no, I mean, I think you take Lamar Jackson at that point.
If you have an opportunity, do you trade up for one of them?
I mean,
if it's talking about shoring up the offensive line, if that's what everyone agrees on, that's one of our glaring weaknesses currently for our offense, why would you not trade up at that point in time for potentially the person that's going to shore that up?
Because you still do need to address tight end. You still do need to address wide receiver. And you're going to have to take possibly another running back, somebody else down the line. I mean, I don't think you can give up picks at that point.
We got to get a linebacker too. I mean, I think
that might be the surprise, is if they take a linebacker in the first round.
Which I need a Sam
doing.
linebacker right now. So I mean,
not a lot of people are talking about linebacker, but I think you're right. I mean, I think they could kind of come in because we only have two legitimate starting linebackers right now, unless you count Blair Brown as a starter, which he could be, but I don't think he is. I think you can get a better linebacker in the draft. Tight ends, I mean, only 21 tight ends have been taken since 2000 in the first round. So that's an average of 1.3 a year in the first round. That just goes to show teams don't value tight ends very high. There hasn't been a decent tight end taken in the draft in like 3 years. And that's like across the board. I mean, the best tight end taken in the last 2 years is Evan Ingram from the Giants. And he had a pretty decent year. But every other tight end, O.J. Howard, pedestrian, every other tight end that has been taken hasn't really been that great. You can find value in tight end late in the draft.
So, O.J. Howard actually dropped to Tampa Bay at 18. People were freaking out because he was, it. And yeah, you're right. He was very pedestrian. I know because he was on my fantasy team and didn't do anything.
I was looking through the tight ends taken, and I was very surprised. Evan Ingram, I've heard of him, but I didn't know he had a decent year. He had a pretty good year, almost 500 yards receiving. I think he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns. Tight ends, I was big on Gesicki and Goddard and Hayden Hurst early, but after kind of looking at the track record of tight ends, I'm not so big on a tight end in the first round anymore.
Right.
I think we could get value later. As far as guards go, I think Wynn, Hernandez, Nelson, I think they're really good, but I think they're going to be gone. Trading up is an interesting concept, which they could do. After those three, you're looking at Billy Price from Ohio State, 6'4", 305, tore his pec muscle benching at the combine. But he's a really good guy, has the ability to handle big nose tackles, which is good for the interior. Colton Miller, tackle from UCLA, 6'9", 309. He's a tackle, but we're going to have to replace Parnell sooner than later. Connor Williams, 6'5", 296. Braden Smith from Auburn.
You see any of these guys being first-round talents?
You could probably get those guys in the second round.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm big on. I think they're going to take the best available player. I don't think it matters what position they play besides maybe defensive back and quarterback. I think those are the only two positions that we don't take best available player.
But you don't.
But what if Lamar Jackson is the best available player?
Exactly. You don't think he's.
I don't think
the
they
best
take
available?
a quarterback. I just don't. I think they are set on who they have. I think they'll bring in a quarterback for sure. I don't know if it's going to be a veteran that's been cut or an undrafted rookie, but I definitely don't think they take a first-round pick.
But can you say take best available player and then say don't take a quarterback?
Yeah, because like I said, I think quarterback and defensive back are the only two positions where we just kind of are like we're good, because we have so much money tied up in Bouye and Ramsey. We can't really warrant bringing in a rookie. He's not even to see the field that much. I mean,
unless he plays nickel.
Unless he plays nickel or safety.
Yeah.
And even then, we have money signed up or money tied up in that. But if he plays nickel, he's still only going to play on that the most 50% of the plays. And you don't draft a first-round player to play 50% of your plays for the next couple of years, not just this year.
So being realistic and who's available, possibly, who do you want them to take?
I think they take the best offensive lineman or the best wide receiver. That's where I'm at with it. And I think I have no idea how they are evaluating these people. I would love to see, or maybe the best linebacker. Best linebacker? Yeah, best linebacker or best lineman or best receiver. I think those three, whoever they value the highest. I have no idea what Caldwell thinks. After the Bortles pick, I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to try to get into the mind of this guy because I did not see that coming.
No.
And what we know about them is they're not going to even tip their hand at all about what they're going to do. So there's no way we can read the tea leaves and see what they're going to do because they're not going to tell anybody. They don't want anyone swiping that pick.
I think I'm still hoping, the draft is crazy when, if all these quarterbacks are taken early, there's going to be other teams hitting the panic button on quarterbacks. I think Lamar Jackson is actually going to be gone before the Jags get him just because teams freak out. And I think someone's going to go for him. And I wouldn't consider it a bad pick. And that's why I think one of those, not Nelson out of Notre Dame at guard, but one of those other two guards, I'm crossing my fingers, will be there. And, again, I just think depth on offensive line is a little iffy right now. We don't have a lot of it.
I like Shatley. He gives us depth, and he's versatile. He can play center. He can play guard. I mean, he probably step in at tackle. We're going to have to, like you said, the right side of the offensive line is going to be addressed. Either the right guard or the right tackle is going to have to be replaced sooner than later.
Yeah. And so why not do it sooner? This is a year everyone talks about the window, but if they don't, I actually think they'll go linebacker before they're going to go wide receiver, just because they just poured money into Marquise Lee. They just gave Dante Moncrief a contract, so I don't know, getting another receiver in there. That granted they did cut Hearns, but I don't know. I just have this funny feeling that we could see linebacker taken, and people are just going to say, "What are you doing?" But it makes sense. Like Jason said, we only have two.
Yeah, we're still shy of starting linebacker.
Yeah. So we'll see.
So, I mean, again, I think really all we can agree on at this point, which if you look at all the mock drafts, none of them can agree either, but is that Jags are probably not going tight end, and we hope they take a guard. I just got to go back to the Lamar Jackson because I'm the biggest Bortles fan there is out there. But if you look at Jackson, you look at what he did on a team that didn't have a lot around him, you look at his just freakish speed. You listen to his interviews. I mean, the kid is a good guy. He wants to win. He works his butt off. I think if he's there, you got to take him. And if you don't, you're going to regret it. He's going to go to another team, and we're going to be sitting here a year from now or 2 years from now being like, dang it, why don't we take that guy?
Well, let me ask you this. If they take him, what is their purpose in taking him? To be the starter, to compete with Bortles, to be the starter next season, or to be a Jimmy G type guy that you can get a lot of picks for, well, if you do it right, if you trade him correctly, to get later picks for down the road, because you play him in the preseason, maybe he gets some time in a game later on, or do the Jags draft him to compete with Bortles and see who the starter is week one?
No, I think at this point the upper brass has made it evident that Bortles is their starting quarterback. I think there's no doubt there. I think you draft him, you bring him in, and it is exactly that. You groom him. You get him ready, maybe for a possible trade down the road. You get him into a few packages where you can use that speed. You can use that just intangibles. I mean, it's definitely not to push him for the starting job.
Okay.
I mean, he only weighs 200 pounds. That just scares me. And it may just be because, like, Teddy Bridgewater was from Louisville and that he was slender and he got hurt, so I'm, like, scared. But something about his – I mean, like, the draft notes on him were just, like, his legs are so skinny. I know that's such, like, a micromanaging thing to say, but, I mean, like you were saying with Deshaun Watson, that's what everyone's saying about Deshaun Watson. Like, it wasn't so much that, like, he had a noodle arm. It was just that he was so small and that if he got hit the wrong way, he's going to be out for the year, and then that's exactly what happened. So that's what scares me about Lamar Jackson. And I think that's what scares teams about Lamar Jackson. And I think this is easy to say because it's two extremes, but I think he'll either go earlier than people think or he's going to fall later than people think. But I don't think he's going to hang around the late first round like he's projected because teams are either going to love him or they're going to just totally stay away from him, like altogether. I mean, 200 pounds as a quarterback, that's tough, man.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think I don't think he's going to be there. Just not because I think he's amazing, but just because crazy things happen with quarterbacks in the draft. And I agree 100%. I think he's going to go earlier than people think or he's going to drop. But I don't think the Jags take him because Coughlin likes big boys.
Yeah, I was going to say, Coughlin's too old school to want to switch up to something like that.
He likes big guys. I think that's one reason why he's being patient with Bortles is because Bortles is big and he's tough. And so Coughlin's like, all right, let's continue to see how he develops because of those two things more than probably anything else. And when you do look at him, forget about if he's a running quarterback or if he can throw in the pocket or any of that. He's just pretty skinny, for the NFL.
One thing you guys aren't taking into account is the fact that he hasn't gotten into the NFL PEDs yet. I mean, you go through a full cycle of that, dude. Yeah. You go from 200 to 232 pretty easily.
That's true. And he's off the Louisville meal plan.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. But that to me is really, and correct me if I'm wrong, the storyline of the draft for the Jaguars. To Lamar or not to Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I don't think they are going to take him if he's there. I just think it's going to be a mistake if they don't.
Okay.
I think the Cody Kessler thing just pretty much solidified the fact that they're not going to take a quarterback in the first round or first through third round. Maybe late round. Again, I see them doing like an undrafted rookie, bringing him in as a camp arm because that's what they like to do. But I don't see them drafting a quarterback early at all.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's put a pin in that, and we're going to talk more about the Jaguars signing Cody Kessler, the new backup quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That sign, trade, whatever you want to call it, from Cleveland. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with more Another Jags podcast. Welcome back to Another Jags podcast, episode 5. We just spent some time talking about the draft and all sorts of different scenarios, and we will be talking about the draft more in the coming weeks as well because it's fun to do. But now we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about the new backup quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cody Kessler, traded today from Cleveland for a conditional 7th-round pick. What that means is, I believe it's after, 6 games or so. If he's still on the 46-man roster for the Jaguars, then the Jags then owe the Cleveland Browns a 7th-round pick next year. If they cut him before then, doesn't make a difference. They don't lose anything. So it's a great move by the Jaguars. Regardless, they don't really have a lot to lose. Kessler's coming cheap. He's young. He's been in the league 3 years, had some starting games for Cleveland. Before I let Jason spew out all the stuff that he's ready to talk about his boy Cody Kessler.
Let's go.
I just want to say what they did here was they got a cheap backup quarterback, if nothing else, which when you give your other quarterback a raise and you have all these guys on the team that you are going to have to pay here in the next couple of years, you don't want money tied into your backup quarterback, which they did last year. Henne was getting made $3 million. Chad Henne, you are my hero. You made $3 million last year. Not the case this year. They got their cheap backup. And so that does change the view of the draft a little bit. It changes, Jason's already alluded to it, with what his thoughts are with Lamar Jackson and if the Jags even take a quarterback. But before we get into all that stuff and what it really means as far as the dominoes falling, Jason, tell us, Cody Kessler, what do you think?
All right, let me break down my boy C. Kessler for y'all real quick. So Cody Kessler went to USC. We all know USC quarterbacks pan out 100% of the time, guaranteed, going to work out. Then he's had some concussion issues. Okay, so we'll start off with that. He had 2 concussions in 1 month, which is kind of impressive if you ask me. I mean, he was able to play within the month and get another concussion, but that's his biggest downside. All right, his second biggest down.
Let's say this, too. He got concussions because he was playing for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, wasn't he sacked?
I haven't gotten there.
He was sacked like 21 times.
I'm about to get to his terrible offensive line. Okay. But he had 2 concussions in a month, which is what's kind of scared people because of the whole thing going on right now. But
I mean, you don't need a quarterback with like his brain working or anything.
No,
right? I mean, that's
not at quarterback position. Definitely not.
Fair enough.
But they had he played most of our sample size of watching him was in 2016. He only played in like one. He got hurt a lot this year. Didn't play a lot this year, and they were really bought in on Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, I don't blame him, but Kessler didn't see the field a lot. But in 2017, this last year, he came in the second half against the Titans, which was awesome to watch. And they would have won that game if he would have started the whole game, because he came in and completed his first 6 passes. Okay. And
where was Jonathan Cyprien in all this?
Jonathan Cyprien, I think he was probably hitting his own teammate, if I had to guess. But he had 7-yard curl route, 9-yard curl route, 15-yard comeback route, 20-yard seam route, 15-yard out route on a rollout. I mean, this dude hits every pass. He's actually very, very accurate. Like, he's a very accurate quarterback. I would think a comparison would be like Andy Dalton. That's a pretty accurate comparison of who he is. Andy Dalton, so not the strongest arm in the world, but and that's what people kind of knock on him for as well. This is not a really strong arm, but he's really accurate, and his passes under 20 yards are usually spot on. Like James said, he had a atrocious offensive line, and almost every incomplete pass you could accredit to him being under pressure immediately. Like, immediately. Even when Joe Thomas was in the game, I think he's like the most overrated player of all time, because I watched games in 2016 where he was in the game, and he didn't do anything for him. So, no offensive line. His windup isn't amazingly fast, but it's quicker than Blake's. So he can.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, he can change his arm angle, which is great. It's always we want in a quarterback.
Love you, Blake.
He makes good decisions.
No, I don't want to interrupt. I want to stop you there real quick.
Go ahead and interrupt, Joey. I don't know anything about his backstory. All right.
Yeah, no.
He's had concussions. That's all I know.
It's crazy that you say that, because first of all, I mean, when I hear we've gotten somebody and I have to like look them up, that's never like a good thing for me. I watch a lot of football, but when I looked him up, they showed a picture of him at USC, and his arm was up and out at this crazy angle. And I was like, dude, that's not a good motion whatsoever. But for you to say that, I guess he can compensate.
Oh, yeah. I watched plays, given he had a terrible offensive line, he had to kind of throw the ball at weird angles to try to get around the outstretched arms of the defensive lineman. So he can do that. And he has really, really good awareness. Like, when he's about to get sacked, or if the receiver's not open, he's good at throwing it like just to where no one can get it, which is I
think when you play
that.
for Cleveland, that's pretty much every pass play.
Exactly. And I mean, and they weren't helping him at all either with the play calling. I'll just say that. But you could, I mean, there was plays where he had drops. I mean, this dude was just his teammates were not helping him at all. So no protection. They weren't catching the ball. They weren't running fast routes. They weren't getting open. In 2016, he started 8 games. He had 6 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. It's not like he was a game manager. There was 4 games where he threw over 27 passes, and 2 games where he threw over 40 passes. So they didn't like ask this guy to manage the game. Like, they had him slinging the ball, and he still only threw 2 interceptions. So it's not like this guy's bad. The interceptions he threw were really one of them was like a 4th and 20. One of them was a 3rd and long. So it's not like this guy's making bad decisions. I think we got to steal with him. And I think that he might challenge Blake for some playing
Well, that's
time.
what I was going to ask, because if people are listening to this and they're hearing you talking about him and the way that you are, people are going to be saying, well, when and if Blake throws his first interception of the season, especially if it's early, game 1 or game 2, are people in the stands going to start chanting Cody? I mean,
I don't think people will chant. And I think when Blake throws his first pick in the first couple games, because we know Blake likes to test his arm and windows. But I think morally, if Blake gets hurt, we have a really good, reliable backup. And I hope he stays on the roster because 7th rounders get cut all the time. And that's essentially what he is to us, a 7th rounder. But I think like you said, I think he's a steal. He's a bargain. I think he's very accurate. His accuracy stood out so much to me. He hits the seam route better than a lot of starting quarterbacks. With Njoku running down the seam, Terrell Pryor throws him. I saw him throw a bunch of good out routes. I mean, these aren't like amazing receivers. These are pedestrian guys. So, chalk me up, Cody Kessler fan.
Okay, here's my kind of reaction to that. I think that's all good as a Jaguar fan. If I was to debate any of that, it would be that Cody Kessler was on the Cleveland Browns last year, who did not win a game, And yes, they were invested in Kaiser, but no franchise wants to go 0-16. So why did the coaches never put him in sooner if he was, as good as we might say? And again, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate. To be honest with you, when I read this today, I just kind of thought, okay, we got a cheap backup quarterback. Let's move on. But it's good. Competition is good for Blake. But that is kind of my concern with him is if he's good, why didn't he play more for an 0-16 team? Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm honestly in awe of Jason at this point that he could talk that long about Cody Kessler because that's amazing. I mean, my thoughts were kind of like yours, James. I was like, if you can't beat out Kaiser, how good can you be? I mean, Kaiser's
People
not
love
that good
Kaiser,
a quarterback.
though. People love him for some reason.
They do.
I like him, but
they do. I don't know why.
I think the reason why you saw him not see the field a lot this year was, two parts. His concussions that he had. Everyone's like hypersensitive about the concussions nowadays, which they should be. And then the fact that they had a lot of young quarterbacks on the roster between, Drew Stanton and Kevin Hogan and Deshaun Kaiser. When you're 0-16, you just try to see what works. So you throw them all out there. I mean, I had to look through the game logs to even find which games he played in because they tried so many different combinations of players. And I think their terrible offensive line, the terrible offense, the play calling was terrible. The penalty situation, like I said, man, they're the most penalized team in the league. They're just hit, and they're just moving backwards every single play. A big play happens, and the ref's moving backwards. It's tough for you to be successful in that type of environment. And I think you put an accurate quarterback, like I was saying, an Andy Dalton type quarterback into an offense like the Jaguars have, I think you might see some success.
Go ahead, Joey.
I think if I'm trying to be a Jaguar homer, I look back at his stats at USC, and he did have, I think it was his junior year, he had 35 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, which you got to be halfway decent to pull that off. I mean, there's no way you do that as a bad quarterback. But the signing to me is just we had to have a backup quarterback. It's completely safe because if we cut him, it doesn't cost us anything. And I think it even more points to the fact that we're possibly taking a quarterback in the draft if the right guy's there.
I don't know. I mean, again, I don't really think much about it because it's a backup quarterback and he's backing up a guy who doesn't really get hurt all that often. I think the most intriguing thing will be is if he comes in to training camp and lights the place up. And then that will be interesting because the Jags just, signed Bortles, let Robinson walk, got Norwell to shore up the offensive line to help Bortles out. It's going to be interesting. I don't think he will. That's just my opinion. But stranger things have happened. I will say this: he's already on Twitter, Cody Kessler, doing the Duval shout and saying that he's beyond blessed and thankful for the opportunity to be a part of this great organization. Can't wait to get to Jacksonville and get started. So that's good. He's excited about being on the team. And, let's see what happens.
I mean, who wouldn't, though, if you're getting out of Cleveland?
I can't blame Kessler for wanting to get out of Cleveland or being happy that he's out of Cleveland and now in Jacksonville where the weather is warm most months out of the year. Remember, guys, if you have not yet followed us on Twitter, we are at Another Jags Pod, and on Instagram and Facebook, we are on Another Jags Podcast. And we actually wanted to go to our Twitter for a user question from the Noah Bennett, who wanted to know a little about Odell Beckham Jr. And I think that's a good topic because it's trending right now, and there's even rumors that the Jaguars were reaching out and interested in Odell Beckham Jr. So I want to ask you guys, and I'll start with you, James. Would you trade for Odell Beckham Jr., and what would you give up for him?
Oh, man. It's an interesting question because he is, I would say, top 3 wide receiver in the NFL right now. You got Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr.
I'd say he's top 2. I think him and Antonio Brown are right there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like Julio better because he's just big, but yeah, I mean, he's a dynamic player. No one is arguing that. Really, it comes down to the price that they're asking. Right now, the Giants are asking for 2 first-round picks, which, no. If that's the answer, no, I would not. But if they were willing to bargain, maybe this would be the opportunity to throw in Dante Fowler Jr. Because he's going to be owed some money here soon. There's not really a place for him on the team yet as it looks. I tell you, if he comes in and the team feels like they can manage him, because the knock on him is – not a locker room guy, kind of causes some commotion in the locker room. if he can come in and kind of follow suit and get in line with everybody else, he changes everything. I mean, he changes how defenses have to play, how Leonard Fournette can run. I mean, all of that stuff. But I think the price is ultimately going to be too high. What I would give for him, honestly, not much. I'm a little nervous about bringing him in. He's amazing, but I saw 2 teams last year in the Super Bowl that didn't have amazing wide receivers. So how necessary is he? And I just don't know. I'm very nervous about bringing someone like that, especially if you have to give up a lot of draft picks, because draft picks are gold. We are now finally in a position as a franchise where we can really start maintaining and building our success through the draft, where we're not in that front 5 or top 10 pick. So I wouldn't want to risk losing those for a guy that, as talented as he is, could cause a lot of problems. And I'm just not sure if it's necessary to have a home run hitter like that on a team to go to the Super Bowl, especially when everybody in the world knows that the Jags aren't a team that want to throw the ball. So if your identity is running the ball, why would you give up to get a guy that is going to be demanding the ball as a wide receiver? So I'm saying no, let him go somewhere else.
I definitely think there's no argument whatsoever that he's one of the top 3 receivers. I mean, he's definitely in that upper echelon. I would definitely say no to bring him to the Jaguars as well. I don't think he would fit in. I don't think that we need him as far as what we want to do as an offense. And I think that he would be super unhappy 3 or 4 games in. I mean, he's going to demand the ball. He's going to demand all the balls. And when we run the ball 30 times a game, he's going to be throwing his hands up in the air and stomping off the field. He's a diva, and I don't think it would work.
Not to mention the fact that he's coming from the Giants, who play in New York, which is a very big market. All of a sudden then be in Jacksonville, which we're forgotten a lot. That's hard for some big time guys that are divas, like you said he is. So I just don't think it would be a fit. And I feel like I'm not sure exactly what the Giants are trying to accomplish by asking for 2 first-round picks for the guy. It's like they're shopping him but not really shopping him. The Jaguars have been rumored, as one of the teams listed to reach out, but I think everyone was reaching out. What is it going to cost? Well, let's gauge this guy, but I don't see it fitting. Doug Marrone does not want someone like this on the team.
No, and Coughlin doesn't either. But I mean, just to play devil's advocate,
Coughlin doesn't either. Who was the coach when they drafted him?
Well, but you don't know what a guy's going to turn out like when you've got him on your team.
I mean, I just think no one's talking about the fact that Coughlin signed off on this guy in 2014.
Yeah, not only that, I mean,
and look where he got him.
There's only a few. There's only a handful of coaches I think that can really wrangle in people like this, and it's probably going to be like a Belichick or it's going to be a Coughlin. And between Coughlin being in the front office and then having Marrone, these are hard-nosed guys that they don't put up with crap. They establish a full organization of this is how we do things. You're gonna adapt to exactly how we run things. And those are the people that can bring in these other type of players that can be written off as toxic in the locker room, getting into a lot of trouble outside, and be able to wrangle them in, get them calm down or whatever they need to do, and focus and play and usually excel. That being said, I personally don't think we can afford or we're going to try to move and get them. But if we do, I think we're a good fit to bring him in and him excel here. Even though we run first, I mean, that could open up a lot of throwing room for us.
I mean, if you think about the Giants drafted him 12th overall. So, and if he's not going to get a new deal with the Giants, why wouldn't you play your year without a deal with a team that could win the Super Bowl? So why, if the Jags give up their first-round pick, second-round pick, next year's second-round pick, and they get Odell for 1 year?
Could you sign him to a 1 year deal, though? You think?
No, he's still playing on his deal this year. So he wants a new deal, which is the problem. But if he's not going to get a new deal from the Giants, would you rather not have a deal from the Giants or not have a deal from the Jaguars? You can exhibit your skill, especially coming off of an injury, much better on a team that could make a viable Super Bowl run versus a team that may be picking first or second next year.
So would you give up the Jags
I would
first?
give up this year's first, this year's second, and next year's second. I wouldn't give up more than that. Like you said,
that's a lot.
The price tag for 2 first-round picks, who even has that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's giving up your whole future for a guy that you have to have $20 million a year to pay. But I think if you rent him on a 1 year deal, I think the Jaguars are the favorites to win the Super Bowl if Odell Beckham's on the team.
Actually, the other interesting thing, too, is that, and I just said it, that we're a run-first team, but this last year I think we split it passing and running dead even. It was like 527 each. So really we're pretty much well-rounded when it comes to passing and running. So even though we want to be more running, we're dead even when it comes to both currently.
So would you give up a number one and Fowler?
I would, because I think Odell Beckham is literally a team-changing player. I mean, his injury is the only thing that gives me reservations, but the guy is, I believe, the best receiver in the league. I think Antonio Brown is really good, especially what he did to us in the playoffs. But besides Antonio Brown, I don't think there's anyone I would rather have than Odell Beckham.
Well, and that's kind of my point. He changes a whole team, but Antonio Brown, I think, is the best receiver in the NFL, and he did some things against the Jags, and they lost. So it's just, how badly do you need the best wide receiver in the league?
Him by himself, I agree, but you pair him with the best defense in the league, the number one rushing offense, and a quarterback who's not afraid to throw it down the field. And I think you, like I said, have a recipe for the odds-on favorite team to win the Super Bowl. I mean, you would have the number one defense, the number one rushing offense, and one of the best wide receivers on your team.
I mean, you'd basically be going all in at that point. 1 year Super Bowl run, we're winning it this year. And I would be all for that. And I agree with Robert 100% that Marone and Coughlin, the structure they have in place can rein in guys who are bad locker room guys other places and things like that. And I think the players have buy-in on that. And that is what supports that, is you're not going in there and being a horrible guy, because the players aren't going to allow it. But I don't think they're changing their system to allow his ego to be stroked enough to where he would be happy here. I think that's the problem, and it's not worth it because of that.
If they signed him, I would not do cartwheels down the street. I would be cautiously optimistic, just based on his talent alone. But this team, and I think it's why Jacksonville loves this team, not just because they win, but because of how they do it and their makeup. And it just seems like he's a square peg in a round hole if he comes to Jacksonville. It just doesn't seem like it would fit. If it did, awesome. I mean, you're right. They would be incredible. But I just don't know. I mean,
it just doesn't feel right. I agree, man. It just does not feel right.
Yeah. But having said that, if they sign him, we'll talk about it on here.
I'll probably have a Odell jersey at that point. I mean, who knows? But yeah.
We're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks for listening again to Another Jags podcast. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast, and on Twitter at Another Jags Pod. And please, please, please send us any questions our way on any of those platforms. Again, you can also listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, whatever podcasting platform you have. So please spread the word and tell anyone that you know that is a Jags fan to listen to us. Be on the lookout for our new episodes. We're going to be talking about all the new rule changes in the NFL, as well as us doing the draft as it's happening. So be on the lookout for all those episodes to air in the coming weeks. Thanks again, and go Jags.